It's kind of difficult to give context into just how big of a deal the melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya really was. Because ultimately it was a case of just being the biggest fish in the relatively moderately sized pond that is otaku fandom. Haruhi Suzumiya was not the kind of massive crossover hit that K-On! Was, for instance. It's not something that normies were turning into, that non-otaku were becoming huge fans of. Granted, it could be some people's introduction into anime fandom, but the series by and large pays lip service to anime and its tropes, and it is deeply entrenched in the culture of it. Haruhi's kind of inseparable from otaku. It's just that it was a really big deal amongst that audience. And really the most important thing that Haruhi did was not simply to be successful, but to be successful while raising the bar forever for its genre. If you look at what anime had lots of effort put into them in the 2000s, you do not see a bunch of otaku-oriented material. When you look at the highest quality productions, you're going to see a bunch of Production IG and Madhouse stuff, a bunch of stuff that was either kind of out there or was very adult-oriented or sort of gritty or meant for mainstream appeal. You're going to see Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex or something. When you look at all those otaku-oriented shows from that era, most of them were not exactly beautiful. And granted, Kyoto Animation were already making waves in this regard when they made Air in 2005, which was itself pretty goddamn gorgeous, but that's even more of a niche thing than Haruhi. So Haruhi kind of blows the doors off of everything by just being such a fucking rich production. In typical Kyoto Animation style, they've got all the location-based background art, they've got highly animated characters, extremely memorable pieces of animation, particularly the ending theme, Dance, which was the meme to end all memes in the anime fandom at the time. And I've said before that I think what Kyoto Animation specializes in, and a huge part of why the studio's shows tend to be so popular, is that they make great memes. Kyoto Animation are masters of creating just little looping, gifable scenes. They have characters just make these expressions that are perfect for a reaction image, or that are just so adorable and loopable, and you could watch them all day. And Haruhi came about right around the time that GIFs, or GIFs, whatever you want to say, were becoming like a big deal on the internet, where we had the bandwidth to have those in your signature on a forum or something. I point all of this out because Haruhi was one of the first anime that aired in Japan that had not yet come out stateside, did not have a DVD release, was not on Cartoon Network, that I heard about before I knew what it was. I started seeing Haruhi avatars all over message boards that I was on. I started seeing all these looping GIFs, all these pictures of the characters just making different poses or whatever, and I was just like, what even is this show? All I really knew about it was that people seemed to really care about it. In the last podcast, I talked about how Manabi Straight was the first show that I ever watched while it was airing on Japanese TV, but Haruhi, which I watched just a few months prior, is the first one I ever watched fan-subbed. I don't even think I knew that it was fan-subs at the time. I think that I just perceived it as a subtitle that was online. I actually watched it on YouTube. This was so long ago that you could get away with uploading full episodes of a show onto YouTube and they'd be there for, a year. And I know it was in dog shit quality because I remember that there's this part in the OP where everything starts flying through space. You see all the stars and someone, I don't remember which character, is floating on a star through the foreground. And whenever I'd get to that part in the OP on YouTube, the compression artifacts would be abysmal. I could not even tell what the fuck was going on there. So I watched all of Haruhi in one night, and it was pretty deeply effective for me. Granted, Haruhi was like the first high school comedy show I think I ever watched. I'd seen maybe 5 minutes of Azumanga Daioh. I might have read the manga by this point because someone at school had it, but maybe that was later. I'm not sure. I was not exposed to this genre at all. I'd never seen any moe stuff. I wouldn't even learn the word moe until long after having seen the show because the subtitles didn't just say moe in them, I don't think. I'd just never seen anything like it at all, and I was so shocked that something like this could exist. Because it's kind of easy to forget that Haruhi is like wildly off kilter, because so much of it is steeped in tropes and it's making fun of all these tropes, but it's also kind of totally different. It's not quite like any other show. I often forget that there's a part where they just like go inside of a video game map and there's like a whole CG giant bug thing that they fight. Remember the episode where they're just playing like a Legend of the Galactic Heroes video game against the computer club? Remember the episode where it turns into a mystery show and they do a full bore parody of Phoenix Wright where the characters are literally doing the exact animations of the game? Remember the episode, I know you do, where Yuki Nagato takes like 6 fucking metal shards through her chest and then pulls them out one by one like an absolute badass, which I'm sure for every viewer was the moment that they were fucking sold on this series. Some of those things have kind of been imitated and maybe wouldn't feel as fresh and original now, but certainly at the time it was like nothing I'd ever seen before in any respect. I was totally blown away by all of it. And I remember being actually really depressed after it was over that there was no more of it. And a big part of that was because the big surprise that came for me over the course of watching the show was how much I connected to Haruhi. Now remember, I watched this show in December of 2006, so I was 15 and a half? Basically the same age I think that Haruhi is in the show. She might be a little older, I'm not entirely sure. And I had been going through a long period of depression at this point, which would only start to get better as a result of anime. In fact, the reason I was so depressed after Haruhi was over was because it was the first thing in a long time that had made me really happy. And I had not been watching anime for a while. I hadn't really had internet access. I had just gotten fast enough internet to even watch YouTube videos recently at the time. And I think I probably had to leave them open all day to let them load up. So after this long period of not really having seen anything, this show comes along that blows my mind away. And that's why I started seeking out more shows on the Mega Tokyo forums and eventually ended up watching stuff like Manabi Straight and Hidamari Sketch that I mentioned in the last video, and that markedly improved my life. Getting to get into anime fandom, start up my blog and all that was a very big help for this period of depression that I was in. But the reason this made me connect with Haruhi so much is that her story, as it turns out, all the self-aggrandizing egotism and belief that she's some kind of god and desire to meet all these crazy people, all just came out of loneliness. It all came out of a sense of otherness, of her realizing that she wasn't like everyone else and this world was disappointing her. And so instead of waiting for the world to start making sense, she just kind of took it upon herself to be her own animal. Now, this came for me at a time where I literally thought that I was a god, that I was the god of my own universe. It was that kind of thing where it's like I can't prove that anyone else really exists except for myself. I think, therefore I am, taken to some kind of logical extreme. I'd been reading some odd books like The Celestine Prophecy, and my dad was talking about The Secret all the time, and I'd seen Evangelion, and I'd just gotten into this mindset that, like, I feel like I have no control over my life, but maybe I have all the control. Maybe whatever's happening to me is actually what I'm willing to happen to myself. And if what's happening is bad, it's only because I can't manage to convince myself that it shouldn't be this way. Whereas if I could, then things would change. And so I started trying to have this mindset that, like, I'm manipulating the world to kind of bend to my whims. And I've always had good luck, but I think good luck really is confirmation bias. It's when you ignore the things that don't go your way and focus on all the things that do go your way, and you feel like you're lucky. And that's how I felt a lot, even though I was depressed. And so when I found out what the pathos was behind Haruhi, why she felt the way she did, why she was acting this way, suddenly I saw a reflection of myself. And this probably doesn't surprise anybody, because I still use arrogance and egotism as a way to morally boost myself. Not morally as in morality, but morale is what I meant. I feel as though the only way to avoid depression for me is to convince myself that I'm great, or that I'm doing something worthwhile, or that there's any meaning to the things I'm doing, even if it has to be so extreme and over the top. And I want to surround myself with only the coolest people. I want to think that the people around me are aliens and time travelers and espers. They're special. There's a reason that I deigned to choose them. They are, my hand-picked warriors warriors, sort of. Though I probably think even more highly of my own friends than Haruhi does of hers. So that's how I connected with this show. And I mean, this was already, I want to say, 5 or 6 months out of the show's actual airing. So it was already a big deal. I'd missed the initial wave of this show growing big in Japan and on the internet. But Haruhi did not cease. It was a really big deal for quite some time. And it's not as though Haruhi came out and then suddenly there's a million high-effort moe shows. Haruhi stood out, and it stayed standing out for a while, and it was really only Kyoto Animation that was bringing the same level of production to every single show that they were doing. And even then, I say same level, but you can't really put Lucky Star on the same terms as Haruhi in that regard. Maybe K-On! Season 2, I don't even think you could say Season 1, was as pretty as Haruhi. It was really sort of in 2009 or 10 that I noticed the pendulum definitively swing, where all of a sudden Sakuga AMVs were a bunch of moe and idol shows. It was Idolmaster was really the moment that it struck me. Like when we had a season where I was watching, a bunch of Sakuga AMVs and it's just a bunch of Idolmaster and cute girls, and I was like, where's all the shonen fighting? Where's all the Bones action scenes? What's going on? How is this? What is the Sakuga now? But Haruhi kickstarted all that. I don't think you would get A1 Pictures without Haruhi, because a lot of what made Haruhi so meme-worthy, I think, was the result of Yamakan. Yamakan is credited as the series production director, as well as the, I believe, director, storyboarder, and choreographer of the ending theme dance sequence. I have my suspicions that Yamakan was probably the one who first suggested doing the episodes out of order, which was a great marketing gimmick, especially with episode 1, because what a lot of people don't realize about Haruhi is that it had a lot of that sort of mystery box J.J. Abrams thing going on. That first episode of Haruhi presents the show as possibly a film club series. You really don't know what you're getting yourself into. I mean, it's obvious that you're watching a film that the characters put together that's like this shittily made movie, but you don't know what the context is of why they've done so in the series. And so you go to Haruhi's website, and it's just the SOS Brigade website, the one that they make in a later episode of the show. And so it's this very weird, mysterious feeling that you don't really know what this show's going to be unless you happen to have read the light novels, which of course most people watching the show hadn't. And if they had, then they know exactly what's going on, and it's hilarious because they know this is the SOS Dan website. So I don't know how much of it was all Yamakan, but it seems likely to me that he had a lot to do with the meme-worthiness of the show, of getting it to have this very viral marketing campaign at a time when that was kind of a new and exciting thing. 2006, that was when we talked about, whoa, they're doing a viral thing. This is like, I think, pre-Cloverfield ARG, like that era though. So Haruhi was marketed brilliantly. And Yamakan would then attempt to direct Lucky Star, and I believe he also came up with the dance for the OP of that, which was, once again, he just said, well, it worked last time, let's do it again, make an incredibly meme-worthy dance, and it was incredibly meme-worthy. Unfortunately, the first 4 episodes of the show, where he tried to take it in a direction of making it the most, low-key, imaginable slice of life series, where the girls start off talking for 7 straight minutes about how they eat various foods, was not popular. The early figures for Lucky Star were abysmal, and Yamakan got shit-canned immediately. Now, I don't know if that's just because he was doing a bad job as a director, or if it's also because he is an insufferable fucking asshole, because Yamakan has gone on to be an extremely controversial figure in the anime industry for his constant weird quotes that he just shouldn't. I mean, he's the Kanye West of anime, except that he doesn't have as many classic albums under his belt. So Yamakan goes off to A1 Pictures, which was brand new at the time, directs Kanagi, does more dancing in the OP and other episodes, has more of that meme-worthy appeal that is sort of was trademark of the Kyoto Animation shows of the time, and it even kind of looks and feels like a Kyoto Animation show. It's got that same moe blobness that Lucky Star has and Haruhi. It's like a combination of all the late era or the late 2000s Kyoto Animation shows. Like somewhere between them, you can pinpoint the look of Kanagi. And that's kind of what A1 Pictures ends up rolling with forever. I mean, granted, A1 is a studio that does all kinds of different stuff. They bring in tons of different character designers. But you'll continually see this kind of like low-rent Kyoto Animation feel pop up in their shows, where they were the other guys doing moe, but doing it up real big. But they weren't doing it up real big consistently. Whereas Kyoto Animation, you start one of their shows, and every second of every episode is like, man, that looks good. And then you've got A1 Pictures, where when they bring in that one key animator who's really great, then you get this incredible looking scene that totally doesn't feel like the rest of the episode. And then you get those weird moments. And I mean, I've complained about A1 more than enough, and I think that they definitively went downhill. I don't think it was like they just were. I liked their early shows, you know. I think they had a point where somewhere around SAO they just started making shit fests. And not to say that I like loved any of their early shows. I think all of them had a lot of problems, but the production quality took a kind of a nosedive at a certain point. But that's all very arguable, and people will argue with me about it. So Haruhi's taking anime fans by storm, and then we get to 2007, and the spring season, we've got Lucky Star starting up, which is itself a long show, 24 episodes, and it pays constant lip service to Haruhi, because it's a show about an otaku character. What are otaku doing at this time? They're obsessing over Haruhi. Konata has the same voice actress as Haruhi. She is paying homage to the show all the time. There's lots of costumes from it, references from it. Some people hated this. Some people saw it as Kyoto Animation just doing a victory lap. But it actually did kind of enrich Lucky Star, because it did feel steeped in what was going on at the time, because Haruhi was a big deal. And you get the magical moment where Konata goes to see the Haruhi live show, which was a real live show. There was this big stage show for Haruhi that I remember. I watched at least some of it. I think that might be the one where Aya Hirano wears the t-shirt that says, "Did you come twice too?" Which is fucking hilarious. Google that one. And they do a live rendition of God Knows, and Konata's in the audience, and she looks up and she's admiring her own voice actress and having this like magical moment there that like sticks with her for the rest of the day. She has like this afterglow, and I'm just like, this is incredible. This is the most meta thing that will ever happen. Meanwhile, in the US, Bandai is preparing to release Haruhi here, and they decide to make a whole to-do about it. They have the woman, I don't remember her name, the voice actress who would eventually end up being the dub actress of Haruhi. They did this whole series of web videos where she would go in a Haruhi cosplay to like the production studio and go to all these different places and like interview people and just like pretend to be Haruhi essentially. It was kind of weird, but they were really hyping it up. They had all these polls for like people to vote on which voice would be best for each character. And then they had these enormous DVD releases where they did a special edition, a $50 special edition version of all 4 DVDs. The first one, actually that one might have been more expensive. The first one had like this huge ass box that was meant to contain all of it. And you know, there's plenty of shows that have a DVD box set. You've seen them on my shelves, I'm sure. Or you could get volume 1 with the box, and then you would fill in the rest later. With Haruhi, they had volume 1 with box, but then it also has like an extra compartment for you to put the CDs, because each special edition would come with a character song album. And then they also had like all these patches for SOS Brigade stuff that you could iron on. One of them came with Haruhi's headband, one of them came with the armband. I would wear those to I ran a film and animation club in my 11th grade of high school, and I would wear those when I got in front of the class to speak, because I am an autistic nerd. And no, none of the class knew what they were. And it was particularly important to me to buy that version of the DVD, because for whatever reason, and I don't know who mandated this or why it had to happen, but the normal DVDs of Haruhi were in chronological order. Whereas if you wanted the broadcast order DVDs, those only came as disc 2 on the special edition bonus things, and they were only sub. You could not watch the dub version on that disc. I have no idea why this happened, but to me, Haruhi only made sense in broadcast order, and I'm going to explain this now because this has been a point of confusion for everybody forever. The original broadcast of Haruhi had the episodes all out of order because Haruhi was adapting several books of the light novels. Only the first book had the really meaningful plot progression element, though. It's the one that introduces each of the characters and what they're all about, and it ends with this big emotional scene scene that would obviously make for a great penultimate episode of the anime. Had they adapted it in chronological order, you basically would have had like 4 or 5 episodes of almost straight exposition, because each time that they introduce what one of the characters can do, there's usually a gigantic exposition dump in the process, and then you'd get this one episode of big emotional payoff, and then a whole bunch of random side stories that don't feel all that consequential in comparison. So they mixed it up. And what was clever about this is that we would learn the information about the characters after we'd already seen them kind of doing some stuff that we didn't completely understand, and then we'd learn what they're really capable of and see them do something really badass, and then from then on, we would get episodes where they use more and more of their powers. They were very clever about how they structured this so that it would all flow kind of naturally. And you'd learn things about the characters at a rate that keeps the story making sense, but also makes it really rewarding for rewatches. There's even some stuff in the anime that straight up never makes sense, because there's parts that weren't adapted of how that film got made, and so we never learn about what the hell was the deal with the talking cat that was on Yuki's shoulder in episode 1. And mind you, some of this stuff was anime original. I believe that the film itself that is shown in episode 1, I don't think it's ever described in the book. It's all about how they made it, but not actually what it is, and you learn about how they made it at a later point, which I don't even think is in season 1. So yeah, it was deliberately jumbled up because it made for a better emotional arc to the story and much better pacing. But then, in 2009, they made a sequel, a second season. But instead of just making a second season, what they instead did was rebroadcast the first season on TV again, but this time in chronological order, and then they just slotted in the new episodes where they would fit in the chronology, which is double fucking weird and another just bizarre marketing thing. But they also made it 3 times weirder by having 8 of those episodes be the same episode, the Endless 8, as it is infamously known, which is a short part of the novels that they expanded on and basically reanimated mostly the exact same script over and over and over again, with the subtle changes as it goes along. Now, a lot of people have argued in retrospect that the Endless 8 series is justified because of the mindset it puts the viewer in going into the disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya film, which came out the next year and is considered by a lot of people to be a fucking masterpiece. I mean, it's a very long film with a lot of exposition and dialogue. It's got a lot going for it. It's got some really big emotional moments and payoffs, and a lot of people, again, think that if you've seen Endless 8, it's even more of a payoff. But at the time, people were fucking pissed. And every week, everyone was just like, how long can they possibly do this? Like, surely they can't really do 8 episodes. Like, it goes from that feeling of like, haha guys, when they did a second one, to like, oh shit, when they did a third, to like, all right, what the fuck, when they did a fourth. And I remember seeing people, like, when the 6th was about to come out, they're like, surely 6 is the limit, like, surely. And then, no, they went all the way to 8. They fucking did it. And I mean, just imagine, because Haruhi Season 1 came out in 2006, it took 3 fucking years for them to make a sequel to one of the most popular shows in the entirety of otakudom. They take 3 years to start making season 2. And the first thing that happens when it starts up, because it started like immediately after K-On! Season 1 had finished, and everyone notices that the designs look a little bit more like K-On! Than before. So people weren't happy with the designs. And then suddenly they launch into Endless 8. And it's already on this weird schedule where I think there were 1 or 2 episodes of season 2, and then there was a few of season 1 again, and then it, just jumped back and forth. Such a clusterfuck. And it did not go over as well as the first time. People were not happy about the Endless 8. I mean, I think it still sold well enough, and obviously they made the movie, and the movie won a lot of people back over. People loved that movie, but man, Endless 8, what were they thinking? Now, full disclosure, I have never seen season 2 of Haruhi. I saw the first episode when it came out, and then I was gonna just wait for the show to be over, forever. And then all I heard about was the Endless Eight and what a clusterfuck it was. And I just never got around to it. I did see Disappearance, and I thought it was great. I haven't rewatched it since 2010, but yeah. So I don't know if that's what made it so we haven't gotten another proper season of Haruhi. I mean, Kyoto Animation does not tend to return to their series long after they're completed. Like, K-On! Got a second season the next year. Tamako Market got a film, like, the next year. We got Hibike Euphonium Season 2 the next year. So they've never done a sequel that's, like, way in the future. And people have clamored for sequels from them forever. Full Metal Panic is the most infamous one, because one of the first Kyoto Animation shows was they picked up Full Metal Panic after Gonzo had only done 24 episodes, and a lot of people weren't happy with Gonzo's adaptation. Then they did, instead of a season 2, they did Fumofu, which was this, like, totally anime original comedy spin-off thing that people were just like, I mean, it's a great show, it's hilarious, but people were like, what the fuck, we just want another season of the show. So they finally make another season. It's only like 11 or 12 episodes. Everyone's like, this is fucking awesome, please give us more, and it never happens. So people have been dying for that ever since, and it's never coming. So the likelihood of us getting another Haruhi seems pretty low, especially after the film. I mean, it took them 3 years just to make a fucking season 2, and then they did it, and people were pissed. People love the movie, but I don't think they're gonna pick it up again. And then we have the disappearance, disappearance of Nagato Yuki-san, which ended up being done by JC staff and was just kind of like who cares. There was a couple spin-off Haruhi things, the Haruhi-chan series and the Tsuruya-san series, which I never ended up watching either of those. I've heard they're all right. But man, it's such a fascinating time and place thing, because Haruhi, I still think it holds up as a good show. It's just that you can never recapture that sort of unhinged madness that was seeing it back then. Like, the idea of an incredibly well animated moe dance sequence is totally passé now. We've had all these seasons of Idolmaster and Love Live. I mean, Love Live has music videos. If you've seen the Snow Halation video or something, you've seen a well-animated dance sequence. It's been done in OPs and EDs all the time. Haruhi started a trend that would persist forever. But the Hare Hare Yukai at the time was a big deal. There was not a gorgeously animated dance sequence like that in anime. It was so original and the choreography was so good, everyone wanted to learn that dance. I wanted to learn that dance. You would go to anime conventions and there would be just these huge scores of people doing the dance in the hall. Some would be carrying the boom box and everyone would be dancing or something. You know, if you watched footage from Japanese conventions, you'd see that happening. There was, I think, a prison that makes the prisoners do all these choreographed dances. I believe they did the Hare Hare Yukai, which is a gross human rights violation. Putting the episodes out of order in order to create a better emotional pacing in the story would become kind of common practice in light novel adaptations. Baccano would do the exact same thing just a year later, to excellent effect. Again, moe would eventually be stepped up in production quality. I mean, Kyoto Animation has one-upped themselves continually over the years. Haruhi still looks great today, but if you compare Haruhi against, like, Hibike Euphonium, or Tamako Market, or fucking Hyoka, or Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, it's not going to look impressive compared to those. Myriad Colors Phantom World. They're all, it doesn't matter if they're good. Kyoto Animation shows always look great. And it's not as though every TV anime right now could just shake Haruhi off or anything like that. I mean, it's still great looking, but the best of the best now just have more technique than what Haruhi had at the time. It's dated. That's what I'm saying. And it's hard to imagine lightning like that striking again, but it's such a weird thing to think about because, again, while to me Haruhi was such a huge deal because it was such a big deal in the otaku community, again, it was not really a crossover hit. It's nowhere near the big deal that, like, Sword Art Online has been. You know, that show appeals to the whole world. It's one of the biggest anime of all time. Haruhi's not like that. It's just such an important cultural moment. It shaped what late night anime was. It shaped what otaku cared about. And it's hard to explain that to someone new and to, like, just show you Haruhi and be like all excited and say like, this is one of the most important anime ever made. And most people are going to look at it like, what even is this? A lot of the references that the show makes are so dated at this point that it would feel like a fucking relic. Like, good thing Phoenix Wright is still popular, but I'm sure some of the direct references would just be utterly lost by this point. I just feel strange knowing that there's no way to reintroduce the level of memery that the show had around it, and especially after Lucky Star happened, and so much of Lucky Star was about expanding on those memes. You have something like Minoru Shiraishi, who has his line in the show where he just walks into a room going, wa 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 wasuremono, and then in Lucky Star, that becomes one of the ending themes and a full-blown song. And if you had the Lucky Star ending theme compilation album where Minoru Shiraishi took all those weird songs that he sings in the endings and they all become like fully produced tracks, then you've probably heard Wa 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 Wasuremono as this like enka song, all because of some line in Haruhi. And then if you were on YouTube and Nico Nico Doga at the time, which is the Japanese sort of YouTube equivalent, you would have seen hundreds of mashup videos of the dance, of anything else, just anything related to the show being mashed up and thrashed up. If you've ever heard the Ryu Seigun, the big compilation of like every popular meme on Nico Nico Doga circa like 2009, you're gonna hear the Haru hare dahi na koto mahou ni jou no yukari ga kagiri naku furisosogu fukano janai wa. Apologies if I fucked up the lyrics, it's been a long time. Ashita mata aru toki warai nagara hamingu furishisa no hatsume yo nanda kanda no konna no onegakete ne tsukemaite mite ooki na yume yume suki desho. So if you want to watch Haruhi in the original broadcast order and attempt to understand it, if you go to Wikipedia and have the list of episodes, they list all the different orders that the show could be watched. It's very difficult to find it in broadcast order online. In fact, it's hard to even fucking watch the show online, which is another reason that it's very difficult to point people in the direction of Haruhi, and I think is entirely why its relevance is waning fucking fast. Like, I don't hear people talk about Haruhi anymore. I don't hear it brought up as the cultural institution that you would kind of have expected it to be. When it came out, people talked about it like it was the next fucking Evangelion, like it was the next step, the next big thing that happened to anime, and now it's not talked about at all. And I think that's entirely because if you're a new anime fan in the streaming era, you know, where the fuck are you gonna watch it? I don't think there's any legal streams, and all the illegal ones have it in the season 2 episode order, where it's a kind of confusing, weird mess with 8 episodes worth of Endless 8 smack in the middle of it. Not the most advised way to watch it, in my opinion. I would recommend going to Wikipedia, looking at the broadcast order guide, and finding a site where you can watch it, and then just fucking having to put in the effort to figure out which episodes to watch in which order. It's a pain in the ass. Luckily, the show just finally got re-released on Blu-ray by Funimation because it hadn't really had any DVDs in print for quite some time since Bandai went belly up. Funimation's been picking them up, re-releasing them. They did Lucky Star, and now they've done Haruhi, so that at least is nice. It's at least available somewhere, somehow, even if you have to pay for it. I don't know if they're streaming it anywhere. Maybe they are now. I could be wrong about there not being any legal streaming of Haruhi if Funimation's put it up, but I don't know if that's the case. But by all means, I think Haruhi is well worth revisiting, and it was a big deal, and it deserves to be remembered and talked about, even if it's hard to explain why now. Even if you show it to a new viewer and they just kind of look at you like, what? At least you can go, yeah, well, you know, that what? Just that's what it was like at the time. You know, that's what 2006 was. You'll just have to take my word for it. Anyway, that's it for this episode of the Old Ass Anime Cast. I realized that in spite of my 10-minute introduction on the last episode, I didn't have a lot of clarifications about what this show is actually going to be, but now that I've planned it out a little bit more, I can share a little bit more intel. This is going to be a weekly podcast that I'm planning to have one full season of 13 episodes that will come come out once a week, just like a proper anime season. I might even release it along with the spring season of anime, so consider this a spring season show. Whether or not it gets a season 2 will depend on the Blu-ray sales. On the next episode, I will probably be talking about Welcome to the NHK, the light novel and the anime series that spawned from it. So if you want to start watching these shows before I talk about them on these podcasts, here's a great way for you to go ahead. Hopefully, I mentioned Haruhi in the last one that I would talk about it. Hopefully that inspired some people to go watch it. But if you haven't seen Welcome to the NHK and you're curious about it, maybe go give it a look or read the novel. I think it's even better. And I'll be discussing that in the next podcast. So I'll see you then.